the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. And it takes a bunch of crazy people, but then what is crazy, right? Like, what is the definition of crazy? Sometimes crazy is just going against the flow and trying a new approach. And I firmly believe in trying new approaches in life. That's how we get all the progress.
Where lust for a whole life and nothing but less makes people jump out of a comfortable pond into an unknown ocean. Welcome to that journey between the East and the West. Who says rolling stones don't gather moss? Hello, everyone. I am Meenu Gupta, your host for the day, and I'm delighted to have you join me every week as amazing people share their incredible and inspiring life stories of straddling continents. Thank you. Dear listeners, as promised, we are back again with Lika Torikashvili, a young trailblazer. Now, some of the countries that you traveled through and worked in were also war zones. Is there any incident which you can recount from such a zone that impacted you in some way?
I was actually very lucky and I'm grateful for that. That I haven't had accidents, but I've been a part of programs that my family and friends were seriously questioning whether it's a good decision to work in those countries and get involved in that type of work. One more example of when that belief was challenged by the world, what you mentioned about how our child is being, challenged. That is Afghanistan, actually, and that is this program that we've been working on for Afghan women that have been banned to get education access by the Taliban. This program openly stood up for those women, and I participated in discussions that were around the topic and advocacy that was around the topic on high level at the UN with the UN Youth Envoy and several other activists. That was when I got asked whether it's a good decision to voice these opinions and, speak against the ban on girls' education, whether it could put me in danger. And there were actual threats to some of our colleagues. There was a possibility of being in danger, but this was a very well thought decision. This is also being a woman is another, part of my identity, and it's a very big, important part of the identity. What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to stand up for women across the world? When I learned about the ban on girls' education in Afghanistan, I was in a classroom, in my university in the United States, scrolling the news, reading the news, and I remember being shocked. And at that point, I was already a youth delegate of Georgia involved in UN advocacy and SDGs. And that really hit me hard because I couldn't believe that this is happening and the world is quiet about it. There was not as much media attention as there should have been. And when you're young, you tend to get angry around topics like that. So when we started this program, UNESCO and Bennington College supported us, and we started enrolling Afghan women back into higher education, Afghan women that were based in Afghanistan. This is still an ongoing project and a very big and important one for me personally, because as a woman, I believe that we need to stand up for women, fellow women in other parts of the world that need our help and our voice. So this was the first time when I was openly asked whether is it wise to do this? Is it wise to do this as a Jewish woman? Is it wise to do this as a woman in general? Would this put you in danger? But I don't know, my belief system was really strong around this issue, and I decided to continue despite opinions of people around me, and I'm still safe, and I hope that will remain that way. But I don't know, I believe that when there is injustice happening, the best thing we could do is lend our voice to people who experience that injustice and especially when it's women. I really believe in the power of women. I really believe in women standing up for each other. And in this situation, it doesn't matter your background or religion. It's women and they need help and they need support. And if you can do that, you should do that. That's my general opinion around this.
And which part of the world are you in right now?
Right now, I am back in Tbilisi, Georgia, and I spent several years being based in Vermont in United States. Has a very special place in my heart, a very peaceful place, mountains and greenery, very similar to Georgia. But I studied there at Bennington College. I was lucky to receive scholarship to go there as well after the UK. So I believe in the power of education and in the power of education opening the doors. I think there are a lot of opportunities that education can bring. It did to me, and one of the reasons we work very tirelessly in Afghanistan these days is because we believe in the power of education.
And why do you think that it is important to bring young people into this conversation of multicultural understanding and peace building?
I think the world will be more peaceful if we teach young people at a very early age about the importance of global citizenship, about the importance of, getting excited to get to know other cultures instead of having that hatred or mistrust. So I believe that global collaboration will foster that dialogue between young people. I also firmly believe that you cannot hate someone you know. And these days, there's so much hate between different religious groups, between different ethnic groups. And sometimes it takes one person to change your mindset completely. One kind person, one kind friend to make you rethink your models and your perceptions. And I believe that if that happens at a young age, that's when the brain can be rewired, easier. When you get older, you tend to lose that child inside of you, and it tends to be harder to have those conversations. And I've seen that happen right in front of me in my own life. I've seen that in between my friends. When my international friends would come visit Georgian friends in Georgia, we would, have conversations about different world issues. We would form friendships. And my friends that never traveled and they've never been anywhere outside Georgia, they would, change their mindsets about people from other parts of the world. When you see it in front of you, when you interact with a different culture, I don't know, I think it has a very big impact on humans. And as a part of my research at Bennington College, my thesis was around teaching peace building and emotional intelligence to students in schools and universities. And a big part of that education, it's education on peace building, conflict resolution, how to manage emotions, what emotions do people have. But also a big aspect of that curriculum was global citizenship and teaching tolerance and diversity. I firmly believe that if there is a curriculum on that, and if there's curriculum on psychology and emotions, we will have a kinder generation of people. I hope there will be one day a resolution on peace education at the UN. I hope that one day we can change school curriculums. And I believe in that change in the society. I think there's so many wars right now, there's so many conflicts, but I'm still hopeful and positive, and I believe in the societal change. It's like a shift in our mindset. I believe that we will get to that stage where we will kind of rethink our priorities, our education systems, and start change from the inside, from the heart, because that's where change really starts, especially with children and young people, because they are still kind and they're still able to adapt to a different mindset. As you get older, you tend to lose that ability to be a childlike human. You tend to be more critical. You tend to be more, unfortunately, maybe less kind because life sometimes can be difficult. A lot of things happen. That's why I believe in young people and And this type of peace education is best at a very young age to bring that societal change that I was talking about.
At what age do you think?
From the age groups that I've worked with, high school is a very good age to, so 14, 15, it's a very good age to work through these issues because, I noticed that a conflict resolution education becomes more relevant to young people at that age because you're not a child anymore, but you're also not a full-grown adult, and you're starting to see the flaws in the world and you want to change things. You also start to have your first conflicts. And from my experience from this research on peace education and some of the sessions that I've done with school students, I realized that at that age, they're mostly open to have these conversations. And they're especially interested in emotional intelligence. They're interested in getting to know how humans operate, what are the emotions that they have, how to handle those emotions, how to channel them for good, how to handle anger, how to handle love. The students are very interested in those conversations. And especially if we bring in, meditation and how to relax in a productive way, instead of going to drugs and alcohol and all of bad stuff that is out there. How do you, in a healthy way, relax at that age when you're so tense and when so much is going on? All of that is very relevant for high school students. And Ramis and I, through Peace in Our Schools program, we worked with high school students in Georgia, Bosnia, and Indonesia, and it was relevant, and they were really interested. So that's the age group that I was considering.
Okay, so there I will share a thought or throw a thought at you. A very relevant one that you mentioned, and I'm glad I'm asking you this question because you've gone through all the stages and you are right now also exposed and you're also doing that. There's another thought that I have about the age group that when you say conflict around that age group when one is in their teens and so on, that is a time when one is facing more of it. So one thought would be they would actually not face it if they already had the tools around the time that their brain cells beginning to put two and two together. Their brains are getting wired. And around children receive impulses when they are at home. Children receive impulses when they go to school. So, in my opinion, if they are around the age of, let's say, 6, and as an example, when being taught what are emotions, what kind of emotions, how to handle them, because till the time they come to their teens, they will not have those conflicts or they'll have less of them, in my opinion. However, that brings me to another question in what is conflict? Because that definition would would give an idea also of the age. A conflict would be that you have some belief in your mind of how something should be, and it is otherwise. It is coming up as otherwise in front of you. And then there is a conflict, either in what you want to see or what you would want to happen or what you would want to have. This is a very, I'm putting a very non academic definition which I would have. What is your opinion?
I definitely agree with you. If we start this education at earlier age, we would have better results later on and maybe less conflicts, and maybe this conversation won't even be needed at a teenage age if we start at the age of 6. And then you mentioned very important aspect of this work, which is your brains get wired at home and at school. And the home aspect is very, very big at the age of 6. In fact, at the age of 6, it's more influence of your home than influence of school, because whatever you learn at school, you then bring home and then you reflect on it with your parents. I think it would be very interesting to research and come up with some answers on this question on how do we tackle this at the age of 6, because that would be brilliant. because then those children won't be traumatized by a lot of things that are learned at home. Because unfortunately, a lot of wrong things are learned, especially at home. And then the schools, why did we focus on schools? Because at school, at that age especially, maybe you have a lot of influence at home, but your consciousness kind of develops to the extent when you can question whatever you're learning at home. And maybe with enough stimulus with professional work at school, maybe you will have enough resilience to question whatever home tells you and wire your brain the way you want it to, and not the way your home and your parents are wiring it for you. Because the fact is that our brains are wired every second, right, by the outside world. And then if you have that power to wire your brain yourself, and you have that knowledge how to wire your brain yourself, then you're on the right path, right? But that's knowledge. That's very big knowledge that you need to somehow tap into. The hope was that if we start at least introducing those ideas to children in schools, when they're already developing their consciousness to the extent when if they find some information useful, then they can do their own research on it later on. So that was the hope behind why schools specifically. But conflict is a whole other big topic, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. But I guess we have positive conflicts that lead to leveling up and learning more, and then we have negative conflicts that lead us to self-destruction and destruction in general. And we have inner conflicts, and then we have conflicts with the world, and we have conflicts at home. And having tools how to resolve them is a very big support system, I believe, for all of us humans, because conflict is something that is present in every person's life. And knowing how to productively tackle it, that's something that everyone is interested in. From my experience, when we had lectures on conflict resolution, even teachers would stay from the schools, they would stay and listen with the students, with the children, because they were interested. We would do games, we would do lectures, we would have invited speakers, sometimes even online, on Zoom. And it's relevant to people of all ages, actually. That's something I noticed. Older people, younger people. Most of us want to learn how to avoid pain that sometimes conflicts bring. But unfortunately, not all of us know how to do it. And there are tools that are not learned at schools or universities. So advocating for that is also a very big part of what I used to do and hopefully will do more in the future and what we need as humans at the world. Yeah.
Very well said. And I'm going to now take the liberty of giving you two tasks. So, one of them, which you also just mentioned, very, very valid point that at a young age, everything begins at home with the parents. So, the two tasks, which based on our conversation right now, two of them, one, in my belief, to ensure that everything flows down, that the next generation which is coming up is actually a peaceful one from the roots up, is the schools that the children attend. Those schools should have some parenting classes before the children join the school to share, hey, this is how we handle conflict and this is what we are going to teach. What do you think of this? Get so a bit of schooling for the parents before the child joins, because they know, so there is the risk of conflict for the child decreases, hopefully, because it also calls for a lot of openness for the parents. And a second one, since you were saying, we discussed about the ages, the way a child learns 2 plus 2, if and then goes on to higher level of mathematics and other subjects. All the subjects start with, at some point, you start learning alphabets, then you start making sentences, and then you start making paragraphs. In the same way, the same education about emotions and tolerance, etc., can begin exactly at the point where you start with 2 plus 2, at a level of 2 plus 2.
Definitely.
And then you scale it up slowly. So what you're doing is continuous wiring. There are so many
neurons being fired at that age. And that is the age when everything, all the grooves are being set. Actually, by even the age of 8, a lot of grooves have already been set. So, according to many belief systems, also I've been checking them out, a lot of belief systems, even for medicines and school systems like Waldorfschule, etc., the child is not completely on this earth at times, till at times even at the age of 8. So the belief systems, the grounding is at times not happened. In a similar way, when they say in many cultures across the world, when the child is out of a mother's belly, the child is held very close to the mother for a long period, at least a year. The child keeps hanging to the mother's chest everywhere because the child doesn't feel that it is out. It is out physically, the child is still inside. It has to still develop. It's understanding that, hey, I'm separate. The child is still joined inside. And that comes very, very slowly. The child lives in the mother's energies for a much longer period, for several years. So, even in medical systems of homeopathy, etc., when they treat a child, even of the age of 6 or 7, they ask the mother, how did you feel? So, when a child is sick, so they then treat the child not just based on the symptoms of the child, but how the mother also felt, because that is affecting the child's energies. So, having said that, holistically, to get peace on the planet, in my opinion, of course, senior people are required at some levels, but junior peoples at some level. When I say senior, junior, I'm only talking of age. However, all the equipments are given before you are born. The equipment is not equivalent to age. You have the equipment, the development of that equipment. You have the tools, how to use them, when to use them. That should be stepwise and should begin actually very early. It's the same way as a very young child would not be given a knife, or you would be taught, this is a knife, it has sharp edges, you don't use it. Slowly, you start using. It's in the same way. We all have the tools, and you can use a knife to cut a fruit or to kill a person.
It's the instructions that sometimes don't really come. We were talking about youth, we're talking about children, but even young adults, right? I'm soon turning 27, and I'm also, looking around at my friends, and a lot of us and a lot of them did not receive those instructions on emotions or, self wiring and wiring your brain. And there's so much that we don't know, even at that young adult age, that it's easy to get confused in life and easy to lose direction. And, that mental, psychological strength, sometimes it's even more important than academic strength. And oftentimes, maybe you're doing well in life academically, or you have that job, and you're still not holistically grounded, holistically happy. And then that conversation is even relevant to older people. How do you regulate your inner world? How do you find that support system within yourself when you're confused or lost or feel let down or broken or disappointed? If we learn that at an earlier age, we'll have less mean and unhappy people, because we will learn how to work with ourselves. The older I get, the more I realize how important it is, because what is peace? Peace is also here, right? And this peace here in your heart, that's very important for global peace. Because if you have problems here within, that's when you bring that bad energy outside. And that's when you want to hurt. And that's when you're ready to hurt and use that knife, not to cut fruit, but to cut someone else. Because I firmly believe that it's easier to brainwash people that are unhappy. It's easier to manipulate people that are lost. Lost souls are easier to be dragged into hatred and cycles of conflict and evil. And here we go into the energy conversation, and the vibration conversation. And where does that all come from? And again, that's education about your emotions. And we don't get that. We don't get that at schools. We don't get that at universities. And later on, we go through life sometimes with unanswered questions. And then we have our own families and our own children, and they also receive that same legacy of unanswered questions and trauma. And it goes like a cycle. And now, only now, I'm starting to realize that that's the cycle of emotional and psychological knowledge that we did not receive more than anything else in the world. And that's what we need to focus on as well.
You're truly right. The peace begins on the inside before even getting out, and you can't talk of global peace without being peaceful inside. And you mentioned about the emotional development, which is lacking in young adults. And there I will add something to that. Whether you're 27 or 77, I have seen that in people even at much later ages because they did not get that when they were young. So they continue using what was given to them till much later ages. And the amount of collapses and depressions and the wars which are increasing instead of decreasing despite technological advancement is because one has left a whole plate of development aside and gone on to the other end, which is very risky if this end has not been done. So you cannot make a very, very beautiful house on the outside without having solid roots. You can't add the weight of technology without adding to emotional and cultural development and value development simply. So, having said my two bits, before we round up, what would you like to leave as a message for a younger generation, and B, the other generation?
I will share a quote that I read when I was very, very young, and I loved it. It was so relevant to my worldview at that time. And now, years later, it's still relevant and it's inspiring. And it goes like this: the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. And the reason I like this quote is because, again, you are challenged once you realize that global citizenship idea, once you realize that people are more connected than separated, and it's the politics that wants to separate us. Once you realize that, that's only a first step. After that, you will be challenged to give up on that idea or to stop believing that there is hope or stop believing that things can actually change and status quo can be changed. It takes a bunch of crazy people, but then what is crazy, right? Like, what is the definition of crazy? Sometimes crazy is just going against the flow and trying a new approach. And I firmly believe in trying new approaches in life. That's how we get all the progress. So if we, people who believe that the world can be better, stick together, we might as well see some changes. And I really believe in that. And I guess my wish is that like-minded people get connected. There is a community of people that agree with what we've been talking about today, because it gets lonely when you don't have enough connection with people that are also just as crazy as you. So let's get connected. Let's keep believing. Let's keep working towards that better world. And maybe we won't change the entire world, but we can do our small little bit, and then bit by bit, drop by drop, there will be changes. I believe in that.
So, my dear Lika, with all my blessings and my wishes, go change the world.
Thank you, Mina. We'll do that together.
Yes, I believe so. I'm very sure of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the series Between the East and the West. Do subscribe to the channels mentioned on the site in case, of course, you liked what you heard. I am Meenu Gupta, the host of the series, and I'll be looking forward to your comments. We love feedback. Thank you once again. Namaste and bye bye.